other drugs. When we talk about suicide prevention, mental health promotion, it does need to directly link back to substance use on your campus. Because this is mental health, or this is not mental health block grant, this is substance abuse block grant funding, which means that it does have to directly impact substance use and misuse on your campus. We do know that mental health does play a role in that. So obviously through COVID, a lot of people have been affected. Coping mechanisms tend to be substances. So through that strategic prevention framework process, you will be doing assessment and data collection. And as long as you're able to reflect that the students on your campus show a need in any way for mental health needs, resources, in order to help reduce their use of substances, that's what we're looking for. Coordinate with other community campus agencies. This is something that's been in a lot of our DMHA funding. I know it says regional prevention coordinators, local coalitions, coordinating councils. For you guys, it's really going to be these campus offices and clinics. So you may have some relationships with your community partners surrounding your campus, but having if you're a wellness office, do you partner with your counseling office? Do you partner with your social work folks? Just kind of, is your dean's office on board? Like, do they know about what's going on or that there is an issue, and what kind of relationships you already have? Again, attending trainings, requirements. This conference, obviously a lot of you all attend already, but it is something that's very educational. And we would like, there's definitely going to be different trainings throughout the year that Lisa holds through ICANN. Those typically tend to be required for you all. It'll also depend on what comes out of your proposals. If we find that there is a need for some kind of specific training based on what all of the grantees that round want to implement, we may hold a separate training for that. So I think one year we did some QPR training because that was something across the board that all the campuses really wanted to address. So we were like, okay, why not hold it over? Some of those trainings will be required throughout. It does say at least 4 in-person. In-person now is a relative term because of COVID. A lot of things are recorded. We say 4. I like to say that just because right now we do require that strategic prevention framework SAPS training, which in person is about 3 to 4 days. So that at least gets you those in the budget for you guys. I'm working right now on one that will be a lot less invasive, or at least time consuming, that's more geared towards colleges around the SPF process. So hopefully that will change. And then complying with program objectives, including but not limited to delaying program implementation until adequate assessment planning and capacity building is complete. So this proposal is just an idea of what you want to do. You do have to have approved plans on file with myself before you're able to start implementation. So this is just, your proposal will be based on kind of what your knowledge is now, and asking the questions of any gaps that you might need, because year 1 is data collection assessment. So really understanding that, you know, if you do have all of the T's crossed, I's dotted when it comes to what programming you want to implement, and that you have the data to support that. I know a lot of times schools, we've already talked about a few times, want to just do that big flashy speaker come in or that one-off activity, but it's not rooted in any kind of data that the university has reflected of them, and it's not reflective of the student population. So we try to stay away from that, and having an approved plan with this funding is that key. It's that way to kind of show us that you did your due diligence, you've looked through the research, you've done your data collection, and know why you're doing what you're doing. And then 10, utilize the majority of the dollars for implementation of programs, policies, and practices, which are deemed highly effective by the National Institute of Alcohol Abuse, which is the college aid matrix that I'm sure most of you are familiar with. I do have it linked in the RFF, or other groups that have evidence-based effective programs and practices. SAMHSA has one. The DEA has their guide for the SPF process that was spoken about earlier. I've linked the SAMHSA website here as well. And again, final approval of those work plans will have, it'll be delayed until after that assessment and capacity building has taken place in year 1. And then on the money, so allocate at least 15% or less of your budget to general overhead administration costs. This is your indirects. This is kind of relative. I know some agencies and organizations have policies specific around the amount of indirects they charge. If you do, feel free to submit that documentation with your proposal. It's very helpful if for some reason it justifies the reason for your indirects being a certain percentage, even if it is slightly higher than the 15%. But if it's a policy written, I'm more likely to be flexible. But that's what that is, 15% or less to indirects cost associated with the funding. You need to participate in the Indiana College Survey or campus survey or any other campus kind of needs assessment survey. So I know we'll have somebody talk about the ICSIS tomorrow, and that's coming up in the spring. So I do highly encourage you, if you do plan to apply for this funding, it is a free survey, to go ahead and get that data now, or you'll have to implement one in the first year of this grant, which is not, it's an off year for the ICSIS. So you'll either have to pay Prevention Insights to do that particular survey, or pay to do some kind of other national survey that will survey mental health and substance use needs on your campus. If you do the ICSIS in the spring, you can use the funding to do kind of those focus groups or gaps analysis, things that are missing from the data you have that might help better guide you to what you would like to do. Agree to collect national outcome measures for the work you do. Just because of every funding source, that's why Lisa asked you to do the QR codes earlier today. I need data to submit to the feds for this funding. The national outcomes measures are those kind of demographic basic measures that I have to report to the feds for this particular funding source. So we do require that you do collect those. We do have an outside evaluator this time around that will be helping you all with that. So you don't have to hire an evaluator. That's awesome. So they'll help you kind of navigate some of those requirements when it comes to what I need from you guys. Attend any of the trainings, mandatory meetings. This kind of details a little bit more. Would you normally do a kickoff meeting, goes through kind of how your reporting will go, those are required. Currently, we meet monthly just to talk about kind of how things are going. And a lot of benefits have come out of that. That strategic prevention and skills training, which is the SAPS, or a SAPS equivalent within that first year of the grant. This will really help you gain that foundation for what the whole grant's about, which is using the strategic prevention framework to implement programming and practices on your campus to affect substance use and mental health. We do require you employ at least one full-time employee or equivalent for this project. This can come in multiple different forms. It doesn't have to be one person that's full-time. It can be a couple of different people that are a full-time equivalent for the project. We do ask that they not do any kind of counseling services or one-on-one, something that would be considered therapy. Those are things that for prevention we cannot charge for. We're doing primary prevention, which is before there's a diagnosis, before there's an issue. It's all re-education. And then have policies in place. Obviously, we don't want schools who have no repercussions for students using alcohol, tobacco, or other substances. That's kind of the basics. So we would love to see your policies around alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs, both for students and for staff, because we also know you can't implement a program without having the teeth behind it. So if you don't, it's just, a lot of times it's code of conduct policies for both staff and students. Those are really easy to find most of the time. But we do ask that you include those so I can look those over. And then the next part I'm going to go over are the sections that will be scored. So this is kind of an overview. Completed attachment B, respondent information. This is literally your address, your tax ID number. It has the actual signature. I'm sorry if that page is not signed, that means that your application is not complete. So please make sure it's signed. Because I can't accept it without knowing that somebody higher up than the person who wrote it, approved and said, yes, you are okay to apply for this. It also has a lot of the information I need that once the contracting process comes around that I need in order to do that. Proposal narrative sections is 59 points. I will actually talk about each one of those here in just a second. Attachments, I will talk about some of those. Budget narrative, which is the descriptions, and attachment C, which is your budget pages. Again, I will show pictures of these. They're also in the RFP for you guys to see as well. Again, a lot of text, again, copy and paste from the RFP. The first one is kind of just give me a description. What's your college campus like, including demographics? One of the requirements is we do like to see a majority of your campus population be 24 years of age or under. So we want to see at least half of the student body is under that age, because that's the primary target audience that we like to see for this funding. Description of current substance abuse prevention capacity, including experiences or assessment, capacity building, planning, implementation, evaluation, kind of what you guys are doing now currently, what's going on your campus when it comes to addressing the substances as it is currently. Highlight any experience you've had in utilizing the SPF process, any collaboration with community-wide or other campus agencies, just kind of just really describing what your work currently is and what you've done in the past, so I have an idea of what you guys have done and are capable of doing. We do have page limits. I really do not like reading novels of proposals. It gets them done faster. This says 2 pages, so please try to keep it to that. I have increased some of if you guys have seen this proposal before, I did increase a few of them based on feedback from prior years. Some of them were a little short based on some of the work y'all do. Description of current mental health and suicide prevention activities, so similar to 2, except for this one's around suicide and mental health. What's been going on, and has your campus been able to make that link between your mental health services and mental health, suicide prevention, and substance use? And if you have, what does that look like? If you haven't made that connection yet within services, have you seen that? I know given COVID, a lot of times now it's more relevant than it's been really ever, because we all know that the last few years have been strenuous on all of us, including our students that we serve. So making that connection, what have you seen, just kind of, it can be anecdotally, it does not have to be formal kind of data. Next, so describe your campus's proposed plan. So this is kind of where you give me an idea of what you guys would like to do. If there's any shared risk factors between mental health and substance use, you can detail them here. How you'll utilize evidence-based programs, specify those that are in this college aim matrix. In particular, I reference it often to go back and kind of see where it's at cost-effective wise, things like that. But also if you have an innovative idea that you really think, being able to provide me the evidence on where and how that is evidence-based for you and how you came to that conclusion and why you would think it would fit well with your student population. Based on your needs assessment or the data you currently have, you can also describe methods that your campus will use to assure that it's culturally appropriate and inclusive. I am over the statements of we will make sure that it's culturally appropriate or will translate into the services. Those generic statements are not things I'm looking for. I want to know truly, do you work with your cultural centers? Do you have a relationship with someone or an agency or within your university that truly understands the culture of those minority populations on your campus? Are they going to be brought to the table? Are they already included in things you're doing? So I really want to see those kind of descriptions, not the blanket statement that we will provide culturally appropriate programming and that's it. I truly want to see kind of what's the next step in that.